So yes, Vinod did have his arm up the entire time.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
I want to start by saying I'll take a bet with anybody 5 years from now, we won't be talking about whether fusion is real or not.
Is that right?
Forecast here.
Such certitude. I like it.
No question.
It's so great to be sitting down with you. So I had a chance to talk to you in Toronto for Web Summit, I guess 4 months ago, which was also a treat. And I just wanted to start by asking, you sort of eschewed the press for many years, and you've been so out there. When we talked backstage, you said you were doing two to three interviews a week. I'm just wondering why.
Well, I think there's an important message. First, I love an audience like this, an audience of entrepreneurs. Always invigorates me. And I only talk to entrepreneurs. I tend not to talk to other groups generally, right. Definitely not financial groups. But I think it's important to get the message of what AI affords us out. And I've taken a pretty strong positive view of what AI can do for us. And there's way too much of a dystopian vision from the effective altruism folks who are like, to me, kooks, entirely kooks. And it's important to counter that narrative, especially since the narrative of a sentient AI and what's called hard takeoff, killing all of humanity, is just would take away so much from all the people who stand to benefit from the advent of AI.
Right. So
I think it's important for me
nuances.
to get out there and to be talking about the benefits of AI.
Great. Well, so you did do this essay, you wrote this essay recently, a 10,000-word essay that was sort of exploring the dystopian and utopian versions of AI and its long-term ripple effects. I did think it was sort of funny. Business Insider had run it through ChatGPT to produce some output. Did you happen to see that? I was just wondering what you thought of it.
No, I did
not. Okay. Well, they said basically, if you will indulge me for a second, Khosla's description of life with AI sounds like a good one, with highlights that include enhanced human capabilities, better health care, a potential 3-day work week, a redefinition of human purpose focused on creativity and passion, and robust GDP growth that could make universal basic income more practical. Why are you so optimistic about an AI-infused world?
Well, I'm optimistic because what AI can do. Almost all expertise, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about primary care physicians, mental health therapists, oncologists, structural engineers, or accountants, all of it can be near free. Almost all human labor within some reasonable time frame will be near free because of robots, both bipedal and others. So when you live in that world, we'll see great abundance, great GDP growth. And there's some problems with that, but when I first wrote about it, I think it was 2016, I wrote a 5,000-word blog in Forbes that said AI will lead to great abundance. This is a couple of years before we invested in OpenAI. AI will lead to great abundance, great GDP growth, great productivity growth, and increasing income inequality. Mm-hmm. So that is a separate issue we should address. I'm very optimistic of what AI can do, and this was before any of the large breakthroughs in AI. And so when we got an opportunity in 2018 to commit to investing in OpenAI, it was an easy decision to make, though pretty vague decision because it was so obtuse what we were investing in and where it would go. So I'm very optimistic of what AI can do for humanity. I think fundamentally the need to work will go away. We will dramatically increase GDP growth from probably 2% to well over 5%. That will create enough abundance to take care of the people who are negatively impacted, which is my biggest concern.
It's my biggest concern as well. I was going to say, I think some people would say the need for work to go away, or the fact that it may go away in your version of events, is pretty dystopian, and they're scared.
And I do, and this is why I recently wrote a 25-page essay called AI Dystopia or Utopia. And as I was telling you backstage, I purposely addressed the dystopian view first, because I wanted to address each of those individually. There's half a dozen dystopian visions people have proposed will hurt us. And I address each one of them individually. We don't have enough time to cover that here today. But I do think there's sensible answers. And by and large, those will be societal choices we make. And they will be made country by country, and each country may make a different choice.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that dystopian version. So I think the thing that people focus on right now is misinformation. But what is the thing that you're worried about that people aren't talking about?
Well, I think people are talking about all the right issues. But they're not talking about it as a very large basket of risks. So there's all sorts of risks. I think an asteroid could hit our planet. One came by close enough recently. We could have a pandemic. We could have sentient AI try and kill humanity. Those are all risks we should take seriously. And I do think AI safety has to be addressed pretty significantly, and I cover it extensively. But by and large, the biggest risk we face is strong AI in the hands of our adversaries. I'm mostly thinking of President Xi, and I'm thinking of Putin. That is by far the biggest AI risk. And they're using it effectively. We just had an election in Georgia, and the president of Georgia declared Russian interference and didn't validate the results.
I think the confusion, or at least I guess where I'm confused, is I understand we've talked about this in the past. You obviously are mostly, largely in favor of less regulation because you're concerned about China's lack of comparative regulation and you don't want them to get ahead. At the same time, we do need some regulation. So what is the role of government and policy here?
Well, as I say in this long essay, policy plays a really important role. We have to keep in mind our biggest risk is China. I'm a total China hawk. Because they have a different set of global objectives than we do, and they are an adversary, and there's no doing international treaties and all that. And we can come back to why that will never work. But given that, we still have to have safety issues. We still have biowarfare as a real risk, nuclear is a real risk, all these things that AI can help people design and catch up on. In fact, there's a positive and a negative view of AI. Most of us have heard of LLMs. The next OpenAI just released a reasoning model, a reasoner. Anthropic just released something that knows how to run computers, an agentic system. So if you think of a hierarchy of capabilities, I think the next big, large capability, as Sam Altman has said, will be AI scientists. Now, with AI scientists, you could start to do all kinds of bad science, and I do worry about that.
But again, I guess, so I know that you were very opposed to Senator Scott Weiner, who I think is here this week, his proposal, the bill in California, and you're sort of a mind that it should be handled by the federal government. So what would you like the federal government to do?
If he's here right now, I'd love to debate him. He's clueless about the real dangers, which are national security issues. He thinks it's a state issue. And that's why I wrote an op-ed in the Sacramento Bee on this issue of a state senator. And by the way, I'm a huge supporter of him when it comes to his efforts on housing and NIMBYism and stuff. So, huge supporter on those issues because they are local issues. This is a global national security issue. He's not qualified to have an opinion there. And I'd love to debate him if he's here.
Scott, raise your hand. So, one other thing that we just sort of breezed by, but I think is really a huge issue, and I know that you're a proponent of universal basic income and income redistribution. I have to wonder, though, what the triggers are. I mean, we are already in a society where there are 3 Americans who have more money than 291 million Americans. So when we talk about this future, I mean, it feels like we're here already.
So capitalism tends to concentrate wealth as a natural mechanism. And so we have to have policy to equalize it so everybody has a stake in it. I do think capitalism is by permission of democracy. People can vote bad policies or bad politicians they don't agree with out. So I do think if disparity gets so large that it's a real problem, democracy will take care of it. It's a much stronger system. So I do believe that's a problem. I don't think it matters how rich the rich are. What matters is how well off are the bottom quartile of people on in a country.
Right.
And I think our policies should be focused on optimizing for them, not on optimizing policies for the top 1% or 5% or 25%. And I do think that should be the goal of policy, but that is not what often happens.
It's just hard to see how we get from here to there, and it's also very concerning because we are being asked to, a very small minority of people are sort of in charge of AI, and it's going to impact all of us, which I think is...
Well, first, there's no one person responsible for AI. There is going to be multiple systems in this country, and there'll be others overseas. So I think this notion of one person ruling the planet is a silly notion.
I'd say that if I didn't see Elon Musk running all over the country, jumping up and down.
Elon's a good entrepreneur. I can't believe he's supporting somebody with such depraved values as Trump, but... look, fundamentally, and I've had this debate, I can't imagine anybody who values values voting for Trump. Forget everything else. He's so depraved. It's unimaginable to me, but obviously Trump is tapping into a vein of discontent that's very real.
Okay, right. So this is what I'm... So I wanted to say a related concern is, I do think that social inequality is very correlated with the spread of misinformation. And in some ways, I think that's why we're in the situation we're in right now. Do you agree?
I think social inequality is different than misinformation. Misinformation is because of the nature of social media and the fact that social media has taken political positions.
And you don't think people are more susceptible to it necessarily?
I think when there's large discontent, which there is, they're more open to believing everything. Like somebody said to me, don't believe anything that appears in the national press. Now, and they have their own set of facts. Sure. I mean, the number of people I run into that have their own set of facts. And on Twitter, I still call it Twitter, people call me and say, oh, don't believe this thing about FEMA. They're actually sending the money to migrants in Puerto Rico or something else. I mean, if people don't have shared facts, if people don't have shared science, and science is never 100% right, but we take the best guesses we do around science, and some theses get falsified over time. It just, at the time we are making decisions, we have to make decisions based on the best facts we have.
Right.
I think that's sort of the source of misinformation, but I'd rather talk about entrepreneurship.
Okay, I do it. Well, speaking of entrepreneurship and a little bit of politics, I am wondering how you feel about Musk. I mean, you've battled a little bit online. First of all, I'm kind of wondering why you've tried to engage him.
Well, so Musk is a great entrepreneur. I thought catching that rocket with chopsticks was one of the coolest engineering feats I'd seen. And I sent him a congratulatory message, and he said thank you back on Twitter. So you have to acknowledge what he's done. If Musk hadn't gone out and said, I'm going to do electric cars, we wouldn't have electric cars. There's no chance General Motors or Volkswagen or others would have done electric cars. So it takes an entrepreneur, and this is why I love entrepreneurs, to drive a mission, especially if it's not conventional vision, large vision. So you have to give him credit for that he's been able to then ignore all the depravity of a Trump, the fact that he's a convicted felon, charged rapist, I could go on, and still supports him. I have a hard time believing when Elon starts amplifying Musk's or Trump's misinformation, like Puerto Ricans are eating your pets, like how ridiculous can you get? I don't know how to communicate on that front. I don't know what the right counter answer is. Spread other misinformation that Musk is really an alien or something.
Well, I know that you must feel conflicted because I've heard you talk over the years about what an outstanding entrepreneur he is.
He is an outstanding entrepreneur, a technologist. Yeah. He can get things done that others haven't been able to achieve.
And I've also heard you talk about your Tesla and loving full self-driving.
Well, I love my self-driving.
I guess I was going to ask, are you thinking, it's interesting, there are a lot of people now that are talking about selling their Teslas or not buying them. Has that impacted your choices? Are you sort of...
I bought my Tesla before Elon went crazy. Before he started, I haven't thought about getting rid of it.
A growing number of people are. It's been interesting. Okay, so let's talk about entrepreneurship because there are so many founders here who have such regard for you and want to know what it is that you're looking for. So you have backed so many great entrepreneurs. You mentioned Sam Altman, the Collison brothers, so many others. What is it about them that's special?
What's special about entrepreneurs? First, how many people have heard of a book called Expert Political Judgment? Sorry, I have to shield the lights so I can see people. I'd highly recommend reading it. This professor at UC Berkeley, he's not there anymore, studied 28,000 expert forecasts and defined 84,000 scenarios when the forecast was made. When it was made, not retrospectively, and tried to judge the accuracy of experts across 20 years. And he decided, and this is a statement from his first book, experts have the accuracy of dart-throwing monkeys. And experts extrapolate the past, and if I'm to predict as an expert the weather tomorrow, I'll say it'll be like today, and I'll be right 70% of the time. So they extrapolate the past. What entrepreneurs do is invent the future they want. And it doesn't matter. Last night I had dinner with Peter Beck, who started Rocket Lab, and I think who's speaking today.
Yes.
We had great dinner. He had paper prints that he laid out on my table about 10 years ago, and they create the future they want. No matter where you look, entrepreneurs cause almost all the large change. I've done innovation and innovation only, and only technology-based innovation for the last 40 years. I can't think of a single example of a large social trend change driven by anybody but an entrepreneur. You can look at, we talked about Elon Musk, electric cars. General Motors couldn't do it. They tried. Toyota comes up with a bad idea, not bad, a good product like a Prius, a hybrid, but not a dramatic vision change. It was incremental. You look at Airbnb. Could somebody at Hyatt or Hilton have done it? You look at Uber. Could somebody at Hertz or Avis have done it? You look at retailing. Could Walmart have done what Amazon did? It doesn't matter where you're looking. Even the vaccines were done for COVID were done by 2 startups. So not only did none of these people know the area they were investing, they were entrepreneurs, they didn't know the areas they were investing in, which was their huge advantage in reinventing the area. So in 40 years, I can think of one example of a large innovation, incremental innovation. Intel can go from 7 nanometer to 5 nanometer to 3 nanometer semiconductor processes, though they've had a hard time even doing that. But no large change is driven by any expert, any institution, any large company, almost always. And I'm talking about technology-based innovation that involves large jumps. It's driven by entrepreneurs, all of you. That's why I love talking to entrepreneurs. What do they have? They identify a problem and they're going to solve it. And that's not to say it's bad to be an entrepreneur that's solving an incremental problem, and there's probably a lot of you here, and that's valuable too. Sure. But what's really, really valuable is defining a new vision, a new problem solution. And it doesn't matter whether it's mining or home building or the next best software or the next best AI or consumer product. Media was innovated by people who had no idea they were in the media business. If you look at Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or Netflix, none of them knew they were in the media business when they started. It wasn't CBS or NBC. So it's up to all of you. What do you do different? You think from first principles. If you ask somebody experienced in an area and you say, let's try this, they'll say, well, we tried that 20 years ago. Well, the world's different today. Talk about why it can't be done. Are there 2 assumptions? And then the entrepreneurs ask, can we change those assumptions? So entrepreneurs fundamentally think from first principles, are persistent when everybody says something can't be done. And that's what's so great about entrepreneurs. That's why they cause most of the change.
I think the persistence is so critical.
Persistence, thinking from first principles, and having a passion for a vision, which I love. Look, I started working with, we were talking about fusion to start the session. Bob Mumgard, when I first met him, not very long ago, by the way, we invested in OpenAI and Commonwealth Fusion and a company called Glideways for public transit, all around the same time, around 2018. And I believe Glideways can replace most cars in most of our cities in the next 25 years. I have an op-ed in the Financial Times today, on that. That sounds radical, but these entrepreneurs want to make that happen, and I'm pretty certain it will happen. And it's not robo-taxis. It's not Waymo. It's a much better solution, and we can come back to it if we have time. But my point is, Bob was a senior fellow at the MIT Plasma Fusion Lab when I met him, and we started talking, and he had this idea for a new kind of reactor design. And we set off on the journey. And now it's pretty well funded, I hope well within 5 years, to prove that fusion is possible economically. And they're engineering all the systems to go directly into production without sort of having to first prove the technology and then do the engineering.
Amazing. I could talk to you all day about this. I mean, I'm interested to know, for example, what you think founders should be focused on, or if you don't frankly want to tell founders, you want to be sort of surprised. I'm guessing probably the latter is true.
It's the bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity. If there's no problem, you're not going to get paid for solving the problem. Very simple. So I always say, not all hard things are valuable, but most really valuable things are hard. There's a few exceptions. Keep that in mind. Take on a problem that's appropriate for your level of persistence and pain. It's painful being an entrepreneur. I have a presentation I first wrote up in 1986 on our website. It was done on acetate overhead foils, not on PowerPoint. A few may remember those days. But it says, entrepreneurship is a roller coaster where the highs are high and the lows are low. It's great to talk about the disruption and romantic stories of successes, but most of you entrepreneurs know it's gut-wrenching to be there, and people who can persist through the ups and downs with a passion for a vision. And then you might as well have a large problem or a large vision. That's just what entrepreneurship is about, and that's why I love it so much. I've been on that journey since I was 16. Never wanted to do anything else. I turned 70 in 2 months, and I hope for the next 25 years, if I'm healthy, I'll be doing this, helping entrepreneurs build companies.
I don't doubt you will. And Vinod, I wanted to...
Hey, there's no life better than when you're successful as an entrepreneur. It's really hard when you're going through one of the troughs.
Yeah, really, really hard. I just wanted to give you a chance, because I know this is so important to you, and the election is 1 week away. I just wanted to ask, I guess, what you think is on the line here.
Well, democracy is definitely on the line. Trump, essentially, I have a simple test for MAGA extremists. Was the last election stolen? If you say it was, I don't really want to talk to you because we don't share facts. Then we are only sharing opinions. It's that simple. By the way, Elon, in a Twitter exchange with me, after my 5th time asking him, said, no, the election was not stolen.
That's great. Well,
so
that's something.
He at least acknowledged that fact.
I also just wanted to ask quickly, what do you think the impact will be on the tech world, depending on who wins? Or do you?
My bet is it's not going to be that different for the tech world. I don't see where their policies will be different. It will be different in how we tax people, how we share wealth, what we do about the bottom 50% of the people in this country will be very different for them. Yeah. We could have, by the way, Trump created the largest deficit I know of any recent president, including the Biden administration. That was a much larger deficit created during his term because of the very large tax cuts, mostly going to the rich. If he had given them to the bottom half of the population, the consumption from those savings would have gone up dramatically and GDP growth would have been better, because when you hand money to people who are not as well off, they spend it and you see GDP growth. If you hand it to rich people, they put it in their bank account or invest it. Investment is a good thing, but I think who you benefit will change. But will it affect tech, to your original question? I doubt it.
Well, listen, thank you so much. I wish we had much more time. It's been flashing red, and they're going to pull us off the stage with a hook here. So thank you, Vinod. Thank you,
thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much.